Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin by welcoming members and officers and those members of the public watching via YouTube. The County Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turn their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all make our way downstairs via the nearest available fire exit, which is through the middle doors on my left. The muster point is in the car park to the rear of the building. Okay, item 1, Dawn, do we have any apologies?
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Dew. We have Councillor Atkins substituting.
Thank you and welcome, Councillor Atkins. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Just to record that I'm the Chair of the Board of Trustees and Directors of the Kelsey Kerry Sports Centre, which is one of the admitted employers. Yeah.
Thank you. Item 2, we're being asked to approve the public minutes of the Pension Fund Committee meeting on the 14th of December as an accurate record. Can I ask if any member who does not agree with this proposal to raise their hand now? I see no objections to the proposal to approve the minutes as an accurate record, so we will take that as carried unanimously. Thank you. Turning to the action log, do officers have any comments or updates?
Just a comment on the action log, just to say that I've received some of the information, but not all of the information, so I intend to send it round all together. And obviously, as they were both raised in the confidential section, it'll be circulated outside the meeting when I have that information.
Thank you. Members, any questions? No, I see nothing. And we're asked to note the action log. Are we happy to do so? Thank you. Item 3 is petitions and public questions, and we have received no petitions or public questions. On to item 4, which is the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund Administration report. Can I ask Michelle Oakenson, Governance and Regulations Manager, to present this report?
Thank you. So just pulling out the key elements of this report. For the key performance indicators, just really to highlight to the committee that there were 3 ambers, and the detail of these ambers are in Appendix 1. There's a new section in there under section 3.2, which are proposed changes to the key performance indicators going forward. And if you refer to Appendix 4, there is the schedule of proposed changes. The purpose of these changes is firstly for consistency, to make sure that all areas of KPIs are reporting on. So as you'll see there under the current reporting against the proposal, there are a few additions there that we will be proposing to bring to you. The second part of the proposal is effectively to ensure that we're improving the customer experience and that we're able to report from the very first point of contact right through to when the particular benefit is paid. So currently we work on the point when all information is received, which is obviously our KPIs, but as part of that customer journey, what we want to do is encompass the whole journey, including ourselves and the employer and the member and anybody else involved, such as the payroll department. So for this particular item, we are asking today if for an approval for us to go ahead with the developments of those KPIs during the year. Just referring back to the main report, just like to pull out under section 5, breaches of the law. So there's one on there for the 301 notification. So just a note on that, because obviously this is something out of the ordinary that we don't normally bring to you. So this effectively relates to a batch of November leavers that were not identified on a report for an entitlement letter award, which is a statutory letter that we must issue when somebody leaves. Just really to give the reassurance that the letters were sent in early February. So the deadline for those letters would have actually been, depending on when in the month, but up to the end of January. So it was resolved really quickly. Issue now resolved, letters have all been sent, and we have recorded that on our internal breaches log as well. Just turning over to the IDRP cases, really just a bit of an update of what's been published there. So in terms of the ill health one there, just to confirm that a determination was sent out on the 6th of March, and that one was not upheld. The delay in AVCs, the determination has now been sent. That went on the 27th of March. That one was upheld. And just to confirm that on the overseas transfer one, it's quite a complex case, and that has been extended to the end of March, but we are on track with that one. So that's where we are with those developments on the cases there. Just one further thing to mention on the exempt appendix. So obviously I will not name this particular employer, and if there are any specific questions, we can defer obviously to the exempt section. But the employer on there that hasn't paid their contributions, since we've now received clarification that this employer has gone insolvent, and we're awaiting details from the administrator. This particular employer had a pass-through arrangement, so there is no deficit and any liabilities just pass back to the ceding employer. But we are in the process of trying to claim back the unpaid contributions. And I don't know, Corey, whether there's anything further to add to that.
Nothing concrete to add to that, except for we have been in touch with the liquidator to register that we believe we have a claim. We're just waiting for the information pack to come back on how they tend to distribute the remaining finances.
Thank you. And apart from that, that's the key elements of the report, unless anybody has any questions.
Chris.
I'm extremely grateful that Appendix 3 was mentioned, even though it is exempt. And obviously we mustn't mention the name of the employer, nor would I necessarily ask for details on the particular case. But in principle, if I can ask for an in principle answer, when we do have a situation where an employer goes into administration or into some form of insolvency, where the fund is just effectively the money is just being passed through to us, what is the interest that the fund has in claiming past benefits? Sorry, past contributions which should have been paid, because surely all that we have to do is to pay out effectively or transfer over to some new body the monies which have been paid into us as far as that employer is concerned.
I think probably Corey will be best to answer, but it really depends on the terms of the cessation to kind of what arrangements are set up going forward. But in terms of current contributions, I believe that we have a higher claim to those in the insolvency process. But maybe Corey, you could clarify a bit more on that.
Yeah, I think the key term there is the pass-through agreement, and what actually means by the pass-through agreement. And all that means is we have a guarantor for the liabilities. So when that employer leaves the scheme, the liabilities and the assets go back to the scheme employer who let the contract in the first place. But what we want to do is obviously collect the contributions that company that has gone insolvent actually owed us, rather than collecting them from the scheme employer in the first instance. If we can't get anything from the insolvency, then we would get it from the scheme employer instead. So the fund's not going to lose out in this situation. It's just making sure we get the money from the source it should come from in the first place. And as Michelle said, our understanding is that in an insolvency situation, current contributions that are not paid for this year have priority over other creditors, but we are waiting for legal advice to make sure that is still the position.
That makes sense. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any other questions? I see no other questions on that report, on which basis we are being asked to approve the proposed development of key performance indicators during 2023-24, as in section 2.3, and to note the administration performance report. Are we happy to do that? Thank you very much, members. We move on to item 5, which is the governance and compliance report. Can I ask Michelle to also introduce this report?
Thank you. So again, just pulling out the key details of this report. So if I can take your attention straight to 3.1.6 on the current dashboard developments, because things have been changing in this space very recently. So in early March, the government have announced its intention to legislate to amend the staging timescales, which is effectively the connection deadlines that we've all been working to. And this is to allow more time for the technological system work, enabling the dashboards to actually be delivered. So this project reset will affect all scheme deadlines. And we're currently awaiting further guidance on how we should continue to prepare for the dashboards and what the new proposal is for the new dates so that we can start working to those. As we understand it, we think it's likely to be 12 months or so. And we feel that it's probably, there was some early testing previously undertaken, and it's obviously drawn out some issues there that need to be resolved. So really, we're just kind of waiting on further clarification on how we can progress with the dashboards, but that's as far as we know at the moment. Under 3.3.2, just on the transfer guidance, really just to assure the committee that the link to book for the new guidance now has been incorporated in all of our transfer out processes. So we are providing that, and just to provide assurance to you that we are compliant on that change in guidance there with the regulator. Just turning to section 3.6 on the care evaluation. So since the report was published, the regulations are now to come into force from the 31st of March. So the care benefit revaluation is to be applied from the 6th of April to ensure members don't exceed the annual allowance purely due to inflation being taken into account in the calculations that we do. What this means for us is there's going to be a two-phase system. So there will be phase 1, which will look at the retrospective period covering 22-23 and how we deal with those particular cases. And then there will be the stage 2, which will look to the future and how we deal with that. Then we obviously also need to consider with the future ones the considerations that came out of the budget in terms of lifetime allowance and the annual allowance increase as well. So that is in force, and the actual development of that coming in was really rapid between consultation, response, and those regulations coming in. The final thing just to touch on is under 3.7. So this is the proposal and change of training, core training delivery. So as you all know, there was a demonstration of the new online platform delivered on the 6th of March, and links have been since circulated to anybody that couldn't attend that training. What we're asking for is approval for the training strategy to now be updated to reflect the change in the core mandatory training, just so that we don't need to bring the whole training strategy to you. We can just update that element, and the actual go live date of that platform is very close now. I think the new date is the 12th of April that we can get that up and running. Apart from that, that's all the detail I wanted to pull out of the report, unless anybody's got any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Members, do you have any questions about the report? No, I see nothing at all. We're being asked to note the governance and compliance report and to approve the training strategy amendment to reflect the current core mandatory training approach in section 3.7. Are we happy to do so? Thank you. Item 6 is the Pension Fund Annual Business Plan and Medium-Term Strategy. Can I ask Mark Whitby, Head of Pensions, to introduce this report?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, quite a lengthy document. So I'll walk you through the recommendations, which I think will take you through the main points of the various parts of this. So firstly, the recommendation 1 refers to Appendix 2, page 75, which is an overview of where we got to with the activities from last year's business plan. And you'll see that there's just 2 red activities, the rest are green. The 2 red ones are ones that we've discussed numerous times before, and they're red because we are effectively extending the completion deadlines for both. So one is the GMP rectification project, which if you recall, we deprioritized with your approval last year, and the other is the unprocessed levers, which we asked for some additional resources partway through the year. They're now in place, and I believe a 6-month extension on that should suffice. So that's the last year's activities. Recommendation 2 is the main document for this item, which is the new business plan, same format as last year. The points to pull out on that are that we have changed the fund account, so it's now aligned with the annual reporting accounts to add in the non-invoiced investment management charges, which is a really high figure, but it's actually deducted from the actual underlying funds themselves. So that's not a cash flow in itself. The other thing I think to note is that there is reference in one of the activities to a climate action plan on page 79. We have just built that out from the version that is currently approved and is currently published on our website to add detail to the 2023-2024 activities. So by approving this business plan, you would be approving that climate action plan for publication on the website, the latest version. Recommendation 3 is an attempt to streamline some of what comes to committee. So we have numerous strategies and policies with many different terms in terms of when they would have review points. Having taken some advice on this, we believe going to a 3-year review cycle, unless an earlier review is necessitated by a change in the environment or other factors, would be appropriate. So to be clear, that would be, we would look at when the original publication and approval date was of each of those strategies and bring them back to you 3 years from that date. So that's the first part of this recommendation. The second part is if there are any immaterial changes, then for that to be delegated to officers to progress. So as I say, this is just an attempt to reduce the amount that comes by having 1-year reviews of some strategies. And then the final recommendation before I open to questions is around the procurements that you see in the business plan activities. Now, all of the main procurements in there are going to be further competition exercises using the national frameworks. So the suppliers have already been judged by a panel of numbers of pension funds that they can do the job. We're selecting the preferred supplier. In terms of a Cambridgeshire contract, that would have to go through the Section 151 officer. So that would be part of the process that they would have oversight of who is the preferred supplier. And also high value contracts have to be sealed and therefore would go through the proper officer, i.e. the monitoring officer. Beyond those points, I don't believe I have anything further to add, so I'm happy to open to any questions.
Chris.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Just a tiny bit concerned. I very much welcome us having a lower workload, although I very much appreciate the detail that we do get because it does allow us to understand things more and sometimes to ask pertinent questions, or at least to inform ourselves a little bit more about how pensions work properly. But I'm a tiny bit concerned about the idea that adjustments which are immaterial will merely go to the chair and vice chair of this committee. And it's that definition of immaterial. If we were talking about ones which were financially immaterial, then you're talking potentially about very large numbers indeed, if you were talking about the annual accounts. So I just wonder if we could have something slightly tighter in terms of what's meant by what would be immaterial in this case.
Can I just come in there on that one? So what the proposal will be in addition is any immaterial changes we make to reports. The intention is just to bring them back to you via the governance and compliance report to basically demonstrate that officers reviewed those and provide links to those reports. So what we are hoping that through that process, there's an avenue for challenge if you're not in agreement with any of those minor amendments. It just from a committee point of view, it will just save bringing the full policies back every single time in their entirety, but you still will have oversight of what officers have been doing in the 3 years up to that renewal point, if that helps.
Just so I can get it clear, is it being suggested then that it might be as much as 3 years before we find out what it is that has been done and that could then be subject to challenge and oversight by us?
Sorry, so that will be on an annual basis. So the proposal is that the policies and strategies, unless stated otherwise, some of them will still come annually because of the nature of them. But any identified as 3 years, in between those 3 years on an annual basis, officers will be reviewing those. So once a year via the governance and compliance report, we will be highlighting the ones that we've made immaterial amends to.
I'm very grateful, Chair, for the clarification. May I merely request that the Chair and the Vice Chair of this committee be quite liberal in their interpretation in this case, and that where you think there may be the possibility that we may be interested in an earlier challenge, that opportunity be made available to us. Otherwise, please do keep it away from us until the annual review. Thank you.
I think I can assure you that if there's anything at all which I'm concerned about, you will be hearing about it. Absolutely. Adela, did you?
Yeah, it might be me just being pedantic, it's not a question. But on page 53 of the report, it says here to deliver consistent plain English communications to stakeholders. To use the word plain English is a colloquialism. And I would have thought, you know, it could be put better as, you know, to deliver consistent language, or but to take out the English bit.
I think that's fine. I understand your concern. And yeah, I think it is really, really important that we put things in a way that, you know, everybody will easily understand, rather than an awful lot of jargon, which there is a tendency in most professions to use. Right, so we have a number of proposals on here where the committee is asked to note the status of the 2022-23 business plan activities and current financial position in section 2, approve the contents of the business plan and strategy for 2023-24 in section 3, approve a change in the committee review cycle for the fund strategies and policies to a standardized 3-year review cycle, or as and when required, should regulations or other factors necessitate an earlier review of the fund strategy or policy on section 4, delegate to the head of pensions the approval of non-material amendments to the fund strategies and policies between triennial reviews, and approve the delegation for the head of pensions to progress the procurements within the business plan and award contracts to the successful suppliers, as in section 5. And just to add on top of that, that obviously we will take account of the points that have been made around what is material and what is not material. Are we happy to approve all of those en bloc? Thank you very much, members. That takes us to item 7. It's a report on overpayment of pensions entitlement policy. Can I ask Michelle to introduce this report, please?
Thank you. So this policy in terms of overpayment of pensions has actually been in force for some time. And over the years, it's been updated in line with relevant review points and works effectively from that aspect. The current review has provided some additional clarity on some of the areas in the report, and it's also now including recovering lump sum overpayments. Now, lump sum overpayments are a lot less common and they don't happen particularly often. However, we have had a few situations fairly recently where a couple have been made, and obviously what we wanted to do is just make sure that there was some consistency in cases where that does happen. These can be cases where, for example, an employer has maybe reversed a decision or provided some incorrect information that's meant that an incorrect benefit's been paid. The member, for example, may have filled in a form incorrectly stating that they didn't have any LGPS benefits elsewhere, and therefore we've paid a benefit that we shouldn't done. And obviously there's just genuine errors from the fund as well. So it kind of covers those scenarios if any of those were to happen. So through the policy, you will see in various places that the lump sum elements have been added to those. The actual direction of the policy remains the same, so it will still be the fund's intention to recover all overpayments in all cases, with the exception of guaranteed minimum pensions. Any write-offs will be looked at on a case-by-case basis, and that's obviously in line with the delegated authority in the policy as well. And really just to confirm how we're bound by the Limitations Act, which is in Appendix 1 of the policy. And what we've tried to do there is add some extra clarity around that Limitations Act and around the discovery date. But apart from that, that's the key differences with the policy, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I'm sorry, I can't find exactly where it is in the report, but certainly within the report, there is the mention of an exception to the rule which was applied. The rule which you stated, of course, is a completely correct one, where any overpayments have been made. The basic principle is we shall seek to recover the overpayments, and that is the basic rule. One of the exceptions which is in there is a de minimis exception concerning, to use the rewording, overpayments following the death of a fund member, and that de minimis figure is set at £250 if my memory is correct. And the rationale behind that is or appears largely to be that administratively any figure below that just isn't worth the fund's while chasing. So I had my basic question is to understand and to ask to bring out to the committee the thinking behind that £250 figure. Obviously, the basic assumption should be at zero. Any overpayment should be recovered. I can understand a rationale saying there is a figure up to which it just doesn't make any sense from the fund's point of view to take action. I'm not sure whether £250 is the right figure, is too low or too high, and I'd be really interested to hear just what is the rationale behind that £250 figure, as opposed to, for example, £100 or £1,000.
Thank you. So yeah, that £250 was in the previous policy in terms of pensions and specifically, and some research was done at that point in time as into what that figure should be. And obviously when we've brought in lump sum overpayments, we've applied that same approach. What I will need to do is go back and come back to you on that, of that decision making at the time, because I can't 100% remember, but I know we would have done some comparative kind of best practice and what other funds are doing, and kind of and like you say, the cost of the administration for those, but I'll come back to you on that if that's okay.
I'm very grateful for that. Thank you, Chair. May I just ask that that be brought forward to the next meeting just as a paper so that we can see that for ourselves, because I think it is quite an important point, both in terms of the correct administration of the fund, but also the fairness to the fund and also to deceased members' estates. Thank you.
Yes, I think we can answer that and have a look at it. It's an interesting question because what is de minimis can vary tremendously. And quite clearly what we don't want to do is spend more time chasing or more cost in chasing than the actual debt itself. So thank you. Right, Lee.
Chair, can I just add to that? I mean, I fully agree. There's got to be a figure where it's, you know, the administration just isn't worth the cost, and I would imagine it varies. In some instances, people may just pay it from the estate. In others, it may take months. So I appreciate how difficult it is to come up with a figure. But if you're looking at it, it might just be useful to understand, how many cases there are below this 250 and how much it's actually costing. I mean, I suspect it's probably relatively minor, but that might be another useful piece of information to understand, as well as how we arrive at that amount.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do some background research on that and bring that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Adela?
Yeah, sorry. The same sentence appears under section 5. I just thought you might like to consider changing it as well.
And thank you. Okay. There's no more questions. We're asked to approve the overpayment of pensions entitlement policy. Are we happy to do so? Yes, thank you. In which case we'll move to item 8, which is the communication strategy. Can I ask Sharon Grimshaw, Communications Officer, to introduce this report, please?
Yes, the communications report has 3 strands to it. So Appendix 1 is communications strategy, Appendix 2 is the communications plan, and Appendix 3 is the website review. So the communication strategy was previously approved by the committee. So we just wanted to highlight the changes that we've made and updated for 2023. One of the main changes, of course, is the number of employers have changed, and also the members. You might notice with the members has jumped up quite considerably from the previous strategy. And this is primarily because this year we've included the undecided leavers category within the deferred member category. And this is so that we're consistent with the annual report and accounts, who also include that figure. Because they're both published publicly and they're in the public domain, we obviously wanted to be consistent with the figures that we were reporting. We also added a new section on lifestyle communications. And this was to reflect that what we're trying to do is to make our communications more engaging. Typically, when you mention pensions, people either yawn or get turned off to pensions. So what we're trying to do is to link them around lifestyle events that they are excited about. For instance, getting married, getting a promotion, something like that. And then saying, well, you've had this life event. In terms of your pension, you should be thinking about, for example, if you've had a promotion, you might want to be paying more into your pension. If you're about to start a family or buying a new house, please don't stop contributing to your pension because money's starting to get tight. Maybe you should think about the 50-50 section where you can pay half your contributions. We've also added a new section on the performance indicators.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will adjourn the meeting. Please make your way safely out of the building.
Hi, can I check? Is everything okay? Is that just a false fire alarm or something?
Yeah, everything's okay here.
All right, okay.
It was just that we needed a bit of exercise, I think.
All right.
Oh. Right, we'll just wait for all of the members to retake their seats before we continue.
Okay, thank you. It's just you never know in these days of occasional protesters and the like, whether it's a longer term break or not. As long as everyone's okay though. Okay.
I'll just wait another moment or so for Councillor Bowden to rejoin us. He was just grabbing a drink. Right, welcome back, members, and thank you for taking your daily exercise. If I could go back to Sharon Grimshaw for her to finish off anything else she has to say.
Thank you. Yes, so section 3.15. We've added a new section on performance indicators, and we're planning to benchmark against other funds once the information becomes available. And the performance indicators that we're measuring is the online pension account registrations and the proportion of members that have opted out of electronic communications. And then moving on to 3.2, the communications plan. This is an annual document and it shows some of the key projects that we're focusing on for this year. So the McLeod project, and one of the others was going to be the pensions dashboard, although we've recently learned that this has been put back. And also focus on increasing engagement and supporting activities like the Pensions Awareness Week and Pensions Attention Campaign, which are nationally run, and we're sort of piggybacking on the back of those to sort of try and drive some more engagement around pensions per se. And then with the website review project, we've held some detailed interviews with members and employers to highlight any issues with the website's navigation. We've also managed to survey a whopping 1,700 people to find out what they most wanted to know about pensions to help us with the restructuring of our websites. And so from the findings, we've agreed to focus on the restructuring of the content, testing a personalised approach with the search and navigation, and creating some prototypes to test with members, employers and the pensions team. That's all I wanted to highlight, but I'm happy to take any questions at this stage.
Members, questions on the... Yes, Andy.
Thank you very much. Just a personal experience. I've had a number of phone calls from people who are former members of the pension scheme or are trying to track things. And I seem to be the person, if it's Peterborough, that gets all the phone calls. And I'm then unfortunately having to direct them to different areas. So I'm just wondering on the website if there's something there that can focus exactly to whom you should respond to. I've looked at the website and I see it is there. It's just, it's not very obvious.
Yes. I mean, obviously when we're restructuring the website, we will look at that and test that with our membership. I mean, at the moment, I believe it does actually say contact us or help at the top of the screen, which is usually where you'd expect to see it, but certainly something we'd like to do is declutter and make everything a lot clearer in terms of the prototypes. But thank you for suggesting that, but because it sounds like some people aren't finding it.
I think it's the search use. If you put in Pensions Fund Peterborough, you'll find me and my phone number.
Ah, yes.
So it's how
Yes.
people search it.
How
and,
people get to the website.
and what you might put in the metadata so that it's easy to
Yes.
pick on West Northants website and not
Yes, we-
poor old me getting a phone call from a very irate
We
lady.
did find that in our own testing, actually, that some people ended up on the employer's website where they should have been on the members' website. So that's definitely something we're going to take on board. But yeah, thank you.
Chris.
Thank you very much indeed, Alison. There is a contradiction between, in my opinion, between seeking to increase the amount of communication that we have with members and ensuring the effectiveness of that communication. And I'm sorry to say, in my opinion, that all too many recipients of the information that we send out may find what we send out too daunting and may not actually read it or read it the way in which we want them to. How can we ensure that what we send out is sent out in such a way and with such an infrequency that they may actually engage with us to the maximum that it's possible for us to expect them to engage with us? I fully appreciate there are lots of things by statute that we've just got to send out at certain times. There's no choice about that. Sending additional things out, such as surveys and so on, it just worries me that we overload them with something they don't actually want to see, and they end up therefore not seeing. So I'm interested to know what thought has been given as to how we maximize the effectiveness of the communication rather than maximizing the amount of communication.
It's always a careful balance. I agree with you completely. You don't want to overload people with information and then miss the important things. So we do consider that with each communication activity we do. We consider when was the last one we sent, when's the next one we're planning, how much information are we putting in. That usually affects employers more than it does members. Our communication with members en masse is only usually once a year per membership type. So the newsletters that go out to active members will go out at a certain time of year, deferred members will get a specific one at another time of year, and pensioners. Otherwise, they're getting communications when there's been an activity that they've asked us to undertake, or following an activity that we've undertaken. We send them a very short survey that has simply 3 questions on it, asking them to rate their experience with us. Just like you would when you operate with a bank or a phone company, they usually send you some text messages or something like that afterwards, looking to evaluate the interaction. So we do carefully consider it. We do put the plan together every year, looking at how we can space things out. As you say, balancing the statutory obligations is the really tricky part. But other than looking at it on a case-by-case basis, that's all we can do, because what's going on in the scheme is what's going on, and we need to make sure members are informed about that.
Thank you, Alison. Yep, that's very much appreciated. I think it's actually an impossible balance. Fully appreciate the difficulty. I wonder, reading through this list, Alison, if it may be appropriate and possible for the McLeod communications, which go out both to the employer and to members, also to be sent out at the same time to us as members of this committee, so that we're aware of exactly what both the employers and the members are being told, so that when we face any questions ourselves in our own constituent authorities, we're in a stronger position to know what they've been told and potentially to be able to advise them, or at least advise them who to speak to.
Absolutely, yeah. Don't see any problem with that.
I'm going to say, I don't see an issue, and if that can technically be done, that would probably be welcomed by most members, I think. Thank you. Do we have any other questions, members? Okay, we are asked to approve the communication strategy, which is section 3.1, approve the communication plan, section 3.2, and note the work being undertaken on the website development review, which is in section 3.3. Are we happy to do so? Thank you very much. Okay, I'll take us over to item 9, which is the Employer Admissions and Cessations Report. And can I ask Corey Blows, the Employer Services Manager, to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. There's quite a lot of items on the report this time. I won't go into detail on all of them. I'll just bring out a couple of highlights for swiftness. You'll notice a new section on the report this time. We've added a section to come back to you with any cases where there were cessations from the scheme, where a deficit was payable by the employer and that wasn't collected before we were able to report it to the committee, or where there's been something like a deferred debt arrangement, a debt spreading arrangement, or the need to make an exit credit determination. Previously, we've been very good at telling you the employer left the scheme, what the value of the deficit or the potential surplus was, but not bringing you the resolution of that particular case. So to add the ability for you to scrutinise that, we've added that section to the report and brought up to date any cessations that we reported to you in the last year or so that we hadn't then closed off. So you've got that full information. In terms of the normal part of the report, the admissions and the cessations from the scheme, I just wanted to draw your attention. There is one community admission body on this report, which does require approval from the committee rather than just noting. All requirements of the admissions policy have been achieved by this employer, including the provision of a guarantee from another scheme employer in the fund. So our recommendation is that you accept that admission. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Members, questions, anyone? No, does seem reasonably straightforward, and that's quite useful understanding the historical position as well. So thank you for bringing that. In which case, the committee is asked to approve the admission of the following community admission body and to approve the sealing of the admission agreement, Cambridge BID. Note the admission of the following transferee pension bodies to the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund and approve the sealing of the admission agreement. Aspen Services Limited ×4, Hertfordshire Catering Limited. And note the cessation of the following bodies from the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund: ABM Catering Limited, Aspen Services Limited ×2, Busy Bee Cleaning Services, Compass Services Limited, Conservators of the River Cam, Elior UK Limited, Lunchtime Company Limited, and the Edmund Trust. Are we happy to approve all of those en bloc? Thank you very much, members. Item 10 is the committee agenda plan. Officers, do you have any comments or updates?
Just a couple of comments on the agenda plan. So following the approval of the business plan earlier, at the next meeting, I will obviously come with a new agenda plan for the year, populating all the activities along with any policies and strategies that fall into this review cycle. Just a note on the Code of Practice Action Plan. We do have it on good authority now that this should be released in April. It's obviously been long awaited, so hopefully we can start to see some movement on that now. For the good governance review, in contrast, this is likely to be delayed even further. We're hearing that this will be pushed back to allow some additional work on asset pooling. So we'll see how those two come through, but that's the current position.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions on the agenda plan? No, nothing at all. Thank you. So we are just asked to note that. Happy to do so. Thank you. Right. In order to discuss the following items, we need to move the meeting into private session, excluding the press and public. Committee is asked to resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following two items contain exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, and that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. Information relating to the financial business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Are we happy to do so? Thank you very much. As this is the final public item on the agenda, I would like to express my thanks to those members of the public and press who have taken time to watch the meeting today via the Council's website. The broadcast will now end and the committee is due to meet next on